Hello, my name is Eric Walker. I'm the Volunteer and Community Partnership Coordinator at Orchards Family Success Center. Today I'm giving you a little bit of a tutorial on how to learn how to code, and we have some Legos involved. That way you can build walls or just build something with it, because that's always fun. There's a few things in your bag that you've got. You're going to get a ton of papers, a lot of them. There's going to be blank sheets that are squares, there's going to be mazes, and then there's going to be a bunch of pages that have like if then, for, end, stop, in front of me, a wall is there, all that stuff. We're going to get into what all of that means in a second. Now, if this video is a little too hard to follow along, or just to make sure that you have a chance to learn it all again and relearn it if you want without watching the video, I'm going to put the link to the website that gave me this idea and that gave us this template. But along with things that you have already that I mentioned, you also should have 2 dice, and you should have some sort of Legos. Now, it's up to you if you want to use the Legos to make a creature, a vehicle, a person, a robot that's going to go through the maze, or if you want to use the Legos to build the walls of the maze, or if you just want to keep the Legos to play with them later, that's up to you. That's just a fun way to get involved. But the first thing we need to do is decide if you're going to cut these up, which if you're younger or if you're just starting out with coding, I suggest cutting all these out. You're going to cut following all the lines, and I'll explain why once we get to that point, because we're going to have to go over what all of these different actions mean and how you set it up, and the way that they're shaped helps you learn that. So I'm going to pause this video right now for a second. I'm going to cut these up, and then we'll be right back. Now comes the tricky part of trying to figure out how to learn coding. So you have all your stuff cut out. Just so you know, you could laminate it if you want. I'm not laminating it, but laminating it might make it last longer, and it's fun to play with the pieces. And then you also have a map of some sort. I'm not decorating mine right now just for the demonstration, but you can decorate it, you can color it like I said, or use Legos around it. And I have my little robot that's going to be the program inside of it, my commands that I make, it's going to do them. So I'm going to put mine on the start section. And the first thing you need to learn about programming is it's a bit goofy. It's kind of like a language. And it's not kind of, it is a language. It's just a different kind of language that technology uses to figure out what to do. So it might feel funny at first, but keep doing it. You'll get the hang of it. It'll start to make more sense the more you do it. So you have all your pieces cut out, and the first thing we need to talk about is the while and still in maze. So as you can see, there's a little shape here, a little caret, and then this has the opposite of it, and they fit in together. All of the pieces have a shape. There's normally a flat end, or there's the caret, or there's 2 carets, or a closing end. Normally they would be like brackets on the computer, but we're not going to worry about that. We have the shapes to help us learn. So the first thing you need to learn is everything needs to fit together. If it doesn't fit together nicely, there's a gap or there's a space, you can't put it together. It wouldn't make any sense. Now some of them still might not make sense, but it's a good rule just to get going. And the reason we're starting with while and still in maze, for our purposes right now, this is the best way to start a complex coding sequence. You could just mess around and use some of the starting stuff and then some of the middle stuff and some of the closing stuff and figure it out. And I'll go over what all they do, but if you want to do something more advanced, you want to start with while still in maze. So I'm going to put that up top just so we know it's up there. Now again, this already feels a little overwhelming. The link to the website that we got this kit from is in the description. Read it a few times, see if you can understand it. There's different steps. I'm going to explain what all of the things do, and then it's up to you and your parents to find the step that you think is good for you to start learning. Now start small. Do step 1 if you're unsure. And then do step 2, do step 3. If you think you know a little bit or it's starting to make sense quickly, try to jump up a few steps and try to do step 3 right away. But the first thing we're going to do, after explaining the while still in maze, we're just going to put that up top. So we're going to go over what each of the things do. Go forward means it would move forward. Turn left means it would turn left. Turn right means it would turn right. End is going to be a little tricky, but that just means it's going to stop whatever command we said it was doing, whatever line of things, so we can start a new set of commands for it to do. And then at the very bottom of it, we would put end off to the side to let it know that it was over, it was finished. There's a certain layout to different coding. So it starts all the way on the right, and then it indents a little for the next line. And then when you drop lower, it indents again. But if it's trying to do the same thing or the same type of priority, it'll go back to the same line. And that sounds really confusing, but like I said, between my explanation and the website, you'll be able to figure it out. So the first thing, next we're going to talk about the for, the if, else if, and else. These are the beginning of more complicated commands. You could tell things to just turn left, go forward, turn right, and it would eventually work depending on how complex the maze is or how difficult the task is. But for more advanced stuff, you're going to use for, if, else if, and else. For means it's just going to happen. No matter what, you're going to do it. For example, I can put for, and then I can put 3 steps, and then underneath it and over to the right a little bit, I can say go forward, which means for 3 steps, go forward. And then it would do that. It would go 1, 2, 3. Which is great. It would just do that. Now, if it couldn't do that, it just would stop. Everything under that would not happen. It would jump to the next command that it could do. The next one we're going to talk about is if. If means what it sounds like. If whatever condition it's asking is happening, do the command under it. So we could do if there is a wall in front of me, that would be the whole line, do something. Whatever's underneath it, it will tell you what to do. So you say, if there's a wall in front of me, turn left. And then it'll do that. If there isn't a wall in front of it, it won't do the turn left command. Else if is kind of like saying, also if the other thing didn't happen. So you might put above it, if there's a wall in front of me, turn left. But maybe that doesn't apply to what's going on. You put else if, as in, if this if doesn't work, do this one. There's not a wall in front of me, go forward. Which I know looks a little goofy and sounds a little strange, but once I explain all of these, I'll show you some examples and watch it happen. And then last but not least, for the beginning of the commands lines, else. Else is kind of like saying, this is the other thing I'm going to do. So, for definitely happens, if, hypothetical, if it meets the condition, else if it doesn't meet the other conditions, and then else is, well, if it doesn't apply to anything else, do this one. So for, do it. If, do it if the thing happens. Else if, do it if the other if doesn't happen. And then else is, do it if nothing else works. Again, sounds kind of silly talking like that because that's not how we talk, but this language talks like that. So let's get into the middle sections that you would put between the for and what you wanted to, the distinct factor. So blank steps means you're going to tell it to do that many steps. So for 3 steps, for 2 steps. You can use the die with this. Just pick a number. Say I wanted to move for 3 steps, I can put a 3 on it, so I know for 3 steps, or if 3 steps, or whatever you want to put there. And that would stop that whole line, because if you notice, it's flat on this edge. So for 3 steps, and then it will do the command underneath it. Now the other ones have some other interesting stuff in it. There's a wall. So there's a wall and there's not a wall will apply to the if and the else if starting points. Because if there is a wall, then you attach something to the end of it. Just like if or else if there is not a wall, you attach something to the end of it to explain what's going to happen and when. So, those are all the middle points, and then we're going to do the goofy dive roll later. Let's do the endings right now. In front of me means you just read that whole thing. So if there's a wall in front of me, and then that closes off what you want it to do, and then you give the command underneath it, which might be go forward, turn left, go right, or it might be for 3 steps, blah, 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 because it can get very intricate. You can move all this stuff around. We could also do if there's a wall or there's not a wall to my right, do whatever you want it to do. Say, if there's a wall on all 3 sides, or if there's not a wall on all 3 sides. And then the is greater than has to do with the dice roll. So you could do some interesting stuff with this. You could say, if there's a wall in front of me for, oh, dang it, I messed that up. And then the is greater than is kind of confusing. We'll get to that in a second. So let's focus on the in front of me, to my left, to my right, on all 3 sides. Those have to do with the is there a wall or is not a wall. And you can mix and match. Now, don't worry about the dice roll and is greater than yet. What I would say is pause the video and just try to put some stuff together. Maybe say, for 3 steps, go forward. Now remember, the lining up is kind of funny, so you indent every line if there's a command under it. But then if there's not, or if you're restarting again, you put an end to let it know to stop doing that part. Then you do the next thing, and the next thing. So we're going to do small chains that build into, at this point, don't worry about the is greater than and dice roll. Those have to do with each other, and they get kind of complicated with the ifs and the else ifs, and they can just add some fun into it, and that's a higher level thing to do. But what I would do right now is I would pause the video. I would definitely check to see what level you want to do, and try to put some different codes together. So maybe you'll put for 2 steps, go forward. Now remember, you would put a little tab or an indent each time. So for 2 steps would be 1 line, and then under that would say go forward. And then because that's a complete command, you put the end lining up with the for, which would look like while still in maze, The next line would have an indent, say 4, 3 steps or 2 steps. And then the next line would have an indent and say go forward. Then you put an end, because it's going to go in order. So the robot would look at it and say, okay, while still in maze. Am I still in the maze? Yes. Go to the next line. For 2 steps, okay, I'm going to go 2 steps in some way. Go forward. Okay, it wants me to go for 2 steps, go forward. 1, 2. What do I do next? Okay, stop what I'm doing. Cool, stopped. Now you can send another command of some sort. You might put, oh dang it, this video's getting long. So if I were you at this point, I would not worry about the dice roll and is greater than. Don't worry about that. That's a high level thing to learn, which is on the website. I suggest if you want to do that, look at the website, because you need to learn everything else we're talking about, the basics, before you can get to that level. And I don't want to take up too much time for this video. It's going to be a long one already. So I made a little command line here. Some coding is done. And mine says, while still in maze, next line, for 2 steps, next line, go forward, next line, end. So my robot would say, while it's still in the maze, which it is, go 2 steps forward. Okay, 1, 2, stop, boom, end. And then I could add more stuff to it. I could make it turn left, and then put end. And that could be it. So it could be, while still in maze, for 2 steps, go forward. End. So it stops moving. And then it says, turn left. End. It stops. And then we go back to the top. Which you could also, just to be sure, the way you start and close, they need to be on the same level. So keep one of the ends special. That is going to be the very end. Because if you don't put that at the bottom, it doesn't know to stop all the commands, and it would just keep going. So that was what would happen now, is it would keep going. And so it would go, while in maze, which it is, for 2 steps, go forward. Okay, it would. And turn left. And then go back to the top. While still in maze, for 2 steps, go forward, stop, turn left, end. So as you can see, this line of code is not the best. It's just to figure it out, to see what would happen. So pause the video, do some experimenting with the different things that you need to do and the different ways you need to organize it. I'm going to come up with a few different coding sequences to show you. That way you can get an idea of what you might be able to do. If you need help, if you're struggling, you can always check online. I believe the website has the answers. Or you can give us a call and we can talk about it a little bit. Because again, it's confusing. I'm not going to lie to you. You can learn it though. It's challenging, but you can do it. I struggle with it, and I just started learning recently, which means it's okay to struggle. Sometimes that's a part of learning. So like I said, pause the video, try to put some stuff together, try to figure out what to do, and then if you're uncertain of the organization, I'm going to come back and show you that in a second. So here is my coding that I just did as an example. Now, it's important to notice the way I have it all spaced out. It's explained a little better on the website, like I said, but I wanted to give you an example of what it looks like. So let's take a look. Here's an example. Here's an example of some code that I just set up. Now, do you notice the way it's indented and the way it's set up? The website explains that a little better than I did without a visual, but hopefully this visual will work. So if you notice at the top wall is the starting line. So that's the first thing that happens. So everything has to happen to the right of that. So to do a command, you would go down the next line and do it over a little. So then we worry about this. And then if this thing happens, you do the stuff underneath it. The end stops this section from happening, and then you would jump to the next section. Now this next section is a little complicated. There's a lot of different possibilities. But then if you see at the bottom, there's an end to break off this big section. And then there's a very end that lines up with the first one, which means this whole sequence is done. So let's see what would happen 1 or 2 times example with my robot right here. So while in the maze, he's still in the maze. If there's not a wall to my left, is there a wall to his left? There is a wall to his left. So we don't worry about any of this stuff underneath it in the bracket, and we go right to the end. We do the next thing. If there is not a wall in front of me, is there a wall? There is not. There's not a wall. So we have to do what this says. It says go forward. All right. So we move here and we go forward. The else if means if that one wasn't true, but it was true. So we ignore this. And the else means if none of this stuff is true. But that didn't happen either, so we ignore it. So we go to an end, and we end. Which means we go back to the top while still in the maze. Still in the maze. If there's not a wall to my left, there's no wall to my left. So I have to do what it says. Turn left and go forward. So I'm going to turn left. I'm going to go forward. Now it's important you do it in that sequence. I couldn't have gone forward and then turn left. You always go top to bottom. Now that's over, so I do that. It's done. If there's not a wall in front of me, there's not a wall in front of me, I go forward. Okay? I go forward. Now remember, these don't matter because it didn't happen yet. So we stop it, and then we stop it all the way. We go back to the front. So let's go back. Let's check. We'll go to the very top again. While in the maze still in the maze. If there's not a wall to my left, there's not a wall to my left. Turn left, go forward. So I would turn left, and I would go forward. Then we stop that one. If there's not a wall in front of me, there is a wall in front of me. So I can't do this one, which means I go to the else if. There is a wall to my left. There is a wall to my left. I would turn left and then try to go forward. So I turn left, but I can't go forward. No, that's okay that I can't go forward. You just go to the end because I did everything I could and won't let me do the other thing. And then we go back to the top. Now, as you can see, this code is not good for this maze. I didn't account for what to do about turning right. I had some ideas about if there's not a wall to my left to turn left, just because that might be fun. Like if there's an opening there, I can turn left and go that way to see what happens. This is not optimal. I didn't want to show you the answer to the maze or the perfect way to code. What I want you to do is to try to take all of these other combinations and figure out how to put it together in a line of code to get it to work. Now, I'm going to show you a few more examples, more basic examples, but I wanted to show you something a little more complex. That way you knew that it could look like this and how it could be. But let's show an example of maybe a very simple line of code. Here is a little more of a basic type of code. It's not as complicated because it doesn't deal with these beginnings for, if, else if, and else. It's just dealing with doing things a certain amount. Because for is pretty simple if it's just telling you to go a certain amount of steps. but the other stuff can get a little goofy. So let's see. Again, we've got our robot right here in the maze. While still in the maze, which the robot's in the maze, for 2 steps, go forward. Okay. So it's in the maze, so it's going to go 2 forward. 1, 2. And then you stop. Then it's telling you to turn right. Turn right. Then stop. That says go forward. Can't go forward. So you stop. That says turn left. Turn left. And then stop. And then it stops completely. So then you go back to the top. So, while still in the maze, for 2 steps, go forward. 1, 2. Stop. Turn right. Stop. Go forward. Can't. Turn left. Okay. To the top again. While still in the maze, go forward 2. Stop. Turn right. Stop. Go forward. Can't. Turn left. Stop. While still in the maze, go forward 2. Okay, can only go forward 1. Then stops. Turns right. Stops. Goes forward. Can't. Stops. Turns left. Stops. So this code also isn't good for this maze. Now, I'm going to show you a very simple way to solve this maze example, and you might have already noticed it. It won't be the best code for all situations, but it hits this situation and fixes it. Now, code sometimes is about being efficient for the task, and sometimes it's about being efficient to handle any task. For this example, in this maze, there's a very easy way to solve this. And I'm going to let you look at the maze for a second and try to figure out what that is. So pause the video if you'd like here, and then we'll solve this one. Now the cool part about this, hopefully you were able to figure out easily how to get through the maze. It's pretty easy. The robot needs to go forward 3 steps, turn right, and go forward 3 steps. Now that might be hard to put in code, because you might know, okay, it has to go forward 3 steps, and then it has to go right, and then it has to go forward 3 steps. Now you might say go forward, and go forward, and go forward, and turn right, and go forward, and go forward, and go forward, and end. And that would do it. But that adds a lot of extra things to do, where you could have it go forward 3, stop, turn right, stop, go forward 3 again, and stop. And then you would complete the maze, and it would only be 1 chain, 2 chains, 3 chains, instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that's what I mentioned when I said that some code gets really complicated to handle all tasks. Some code can get a job done even though it doesn't look very nice or neat. And then other code can be efficient for a lot of different situations and you don't have to worry about it. Especially when we're trying to program for a maze, you can make it extremely efficient. I think at the end of that website, the bottom code line is the most efficient you can make the code and how a programmer would do it in real life. But we're still learning, so it's kind of cool to see what they would do, but it's also cool to figure out how you would do that or how you would solve these mazes. So let's look at this one again. So while still in maze, go forward 3. So we're going to go over here. 1, 2, 3. End. So it stops. Turn right. Turn right. End. So it stops. Go forward 3. 1, 2, 3. It's at the end of the maze. End, and then end completed. So you're not in the maze anymore. You solved it. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit of how to code or how to start thinking like you would need to for coding. and also how to talk or type a little bit while coding. Now there's a ton of other ways you can learn online. If you have a computer, you can go to different websites like Learn to Code for free, or you can type in different